What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm also going to break down some very important things coming out for next week. Now, this may affect Tesla and the other stocks out there, but just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with Tesla in the markets. So the market and Tesla are looking a little bit more bearish right now. If you look at the daily time frames, there is a risk of us dipping a little bit lower, but whether or not we get a big dump or a big bounce is going to depend on some big factors coming out for next week. So I want to talk about those factors first before I break down more details. Just know this: as far as the stock market is going, the market was very, very mixed today. We saw some tech stocks, some semiconductors trying to push, like Nvda, Amzn, and the others, but other stocks were a little bit in the red. So very, very mixed market for today. Despite that, I just want to say that the market is very, very uncertain right now about this whole election. Some things are being priced in, which I may talk about in a later video, but for the most part, we're just waiting to see how things are going to go. Now, for next week, we have two major catalysts that are coming out. The first one is going to be coming out on Tuesday. That's going to be the election. Okay. There are two big candidates that are running. They're seen all over the internet right now. And I just want to say that each of them have different policy proposals. You guys have the right to support whoever you want, and I will respect your opinion. I will always listen to others who even have different opinions from my own. But I just want to say that, with this whole election that's going on, there's going to be a big reaction from the markets depending on what ends up happening. Some of these candidates want to increase tariffs a lot more than others. Some want to cut taxes more. It goes both ways. So with that being said, the market's going to have a different view based off those policy changes. And that's going to be one of the bigger factors affecting the way the market's going to move. So we'll see how things go, at least with that. I personally don't know who's going to win, if I'm going to be honest with you. So we just have to wait and see on that. That's why it's going to be a little tricky to predict the later days of the week. But for the time being, approaching the election, I do anticipate some volatility and maybe a little bit of downside just for the time being. Now, the big reaction to the election is going to be happening on Wednesday. So we have the election on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, we're going to be looking for a very, very big move depending on who wins. And then after that, we have Thursday, and this is the second major catalyst. The first one is the election. The second one is going to be this. That's going to be the FOMC meeting with Jerome Powell giving a speech. So the big guy, Jerome Powell, is going to be opening his mouth. Whatever the guy says causes a lot of volatility. So we will see how things end up developing from here. Keep in mind, guys, that Jerome Powell is going to also give us more insights on whether or not the Fed's going to cut rates more. So be very, very, very prepared for that. We'll see how things end up going. And then there's going to be a big reaction on Friday after that ends up coming out. So I would say that Wednesday through Friday are going to have some crazy volatility. And then for Monday, Tuesday, we're going to be watching to see what happens approaching the election. We have 2 full trading days until the election comes out, because the election data comes out after market close. Just keep that in mind for Tuesday. For earnings, we just have Palantir announcing earnings on Monday alongside Berkshire Hathaway. For Tuesday, we have a couple of them, such as Supermicro. For Wednesday, we have ARM and a few more. For Thursday, we have DraftKings, not to mention a couple more. And we'll see how things end up going. For the election, just know that we have just about 4 days, very close to about 4 days from now is when we actually have the results. So we'll see how things end up going with that. And then as far as Tesla goes, let's talk about some levels. So for next week, Tesla's looking bearish here. It does look like it's going to be coming back down towards the support now. I could be looking for a potential target of 245-ish. And if that fails us, we're basically looking for around 242. That's going to be our 20 EMA and also the gap support. If that fails us, we're going down to 235, followed by the gap fill all the way down to like the 220 area if that ends up failing. So there is a risk of downside on Tesla. I do think we could be coming down to at least 242, but whether or not we fill this gap could be dependent on the election. We might not fill the gap in just one big move. It all depends on the election, what kind of reaction we get, who ends up winning. So for now, anticipate a little bit of downside for Tesla on Monday, but then we'll see what happens after the election. For other factors, we have SPY, which is looking a little bit more bearish. If we end up dipping, I'm going to be looking for a test of 569 for Monday. If that fails, we're looking for 565 and 563 as our supports. I anticipate a little bit more downside approaching the election, so just keep that in mind. For ES, it's the same thing. We're going to be watching to see if 57.47 holds. If it does not hold, we have a gap to fill down. We're going to be looking for basically 56.80 as our support, not to mention this gap all the way down to 56.36. The resistance closer to 5,800. I believe that 57.47 is going to be tested, not to mention the 57.68 area potentially. If that ends up failing, this looks a little bit more bearish off this rejection, so it might kind of pop a little bit before it continues to dip. So watch and see how things end up developing. For Nvda is hitting 135 as our resistance. If it rejects, we're going to be looking for a dip back down towards 133. And if that fails, we're going to be looking for a dip all the way down towards 128 to fill this gap. We have this resistance to watch for around 137.5. I think that there's a risk of Nvidia dipping all the way down to about 132.8. So watch to see how that ends up going. For Bitcoin, we look a little bit more bearish. We're looking for basically 68,000 as our main support. We could be dipping a little bit more just looking at the way things are moving. So watch to see how that ends up progressing. For the NQ chart, just know we look a little bit more bearish. We're looking for 20,046 to be tested. If that fails us, we're going to be looking for basically 19,800, not to mention 19,600 as our support. So we'll just have to see how it goes. For the QQQ, we have 484 as our support, not to mention 479. So we might be dipping back down to these lower levels, especially as we have this gap to fill. So we'll have to see how things end up going. And then for Aapl, we're attempting to rebound, but this could be dipping lower. There is a risk of this dipping all the way down to 220, so give this some time as well. With that being said, guys, I think the market does have some downside potential approaching early next week, but then it all depends on the election. The market's going to price in a lot of things about the election, which I might talk about in a later video. Excuse me. So we'll just have to see how things end up going. I wish I had all the answers to kind of predict who's going to win and how it's going to go, but I don't truly have them. So for the people who are asking me, will Tesla come down to fill this gap? I think it's possible, actually. I'm going to be very, very blunt about that. I'm not one of those people that's going to be very close-minded, just say that Tesla has to go up forever. We were pumping very nicely, but since Tesla's big earnings, we kind of pumped and dumped. And there's been a lack of volume so far, so we'll have to see how we react to the election. So could the election drag the market down? It's possible. And can we come down to fill the gap below? It's also another possibility. I'm 100% honest about that. If we lose these key EMAs as support, I expect that gap to get filled. Okay, so just keep that in mind, guys. I know it's not what you want to hear, but that is what the chart is now suggesting as Tesla's building more weakness. I also say that because when you look at the 4-hour time frame, so just like this, we have our 4-hour time frame. This is our 50 EMA. We're just kind of barely holding on. So we'll see how things end up going, and then we'll have to give this the time it needs. So with that being said, once again, guys, I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend and what life has to offer, and I'll be back hopefully tomorrow for another update, if not by Sunday. Until then, thank you for listening, and peace out.